Using offensive language to describe some poor countries. His reported comments during a meeting about immigration with lawmakers at the White House have sparked international outrage. He asked why the US should take in people from places like Haiti and some African nations. In the past hour, the US ambassador to Panama, John Feely, has resigned, telling the State Department that he no longer feels able to serve President Trump. El Salvador's foreign minister says he has sent an official letter of protest. The president is widely reported to have used a vulgar and derogatory term, one that you are about to hear. President Trump is known for making what some perceive as racially charged remarks. For many around the world, though, these comments will seem especially shocking. The context for them: intense negotiations with lawmakers about what to do about migrants who come to the United States illegally as children. According to the Washington Post, President Trump said, "Why are we having all these people from shithole countries come here?" The UN say President Trump's remarks could be devastating.
These are shocking and shameful comments from the President of the United States. I'm sorry, but there's no other word one can use but racist.
The president is understood to be referring partly to Haiti, recently hit by Hurricane Matthew and one of Central America's poorest countries. There's been a strong reaction from there.
If Haitians were to leave the United States, this would be bad for the American economy. Not just the workforce, but Haitians also invest in the United States.
In addition to America's neighbours, Donald Trump also spoke of African nations in a derogatory way. There's been a mixed response.
It was so intimidating, and maybe for a way he should rectify whatever he said.
As Africans, we have to deal with our own problems. Yeah, we don't have to really comment about what Trump really says about Africa.
We do a lot of business with Norway. And
by contrast, Donald Trump, who on Wednesday met the Norwegian Prime Minister, is reported to have wondered why the US shouldn't have more people from that Scandinavian country. Mr. Trump has since tweeted that this was not the language he used in the meeting and denied ever saying anything derogatory about Haitians, other than that Haiti is a very troubled country, in his words. But many senior politicians were in the room and stand by their claims that the president did use the offensive terminology. Well, in the last hour, we've heard from one of those politicians who were present at the meeting, the Democratic Senator Dick Durbin, who maintains that the president did say that offensive word. Let's have a listen.
As Senator Graham made his presentation, the president interrupted him several times with questions, and in the course of his comments said things which were hate-filled, vile, and racist. I use those words advisedly. I understand how powerful they are, but I cannot believe that in the history of the White House, in that Oval Office, any president has ever spoken the words that I personally heard our president speak yesterday. You've seen the comments in the press. I have not read one of them that's inaccurate. To no surprise, the president started tweeting this morning denying that he used those words. It is not true. He said these hate-filled things, and he said them repeatedly.
Democratic Senator Dick Durbin. Well, shortly after the news broke that the US ambassador to Panama had resigned in protest over Mr. Trump's remarks, I spoke to our Washington correspondent Gary O'Donoghue.
Yeah, that's obviously a blow. That's a vote of no confidence from one of the people who's meant to be serving in the administration. I don't think that will go down very well in the White House today, as Donald Trump prepares to make some big decisions on things like Iran. Also, American diplomats around the world, we know, are being summoned to various embassies. African countries in particular, Botswana summoned the American ambassador there to ask formally whether or not it falls under Donald Trump's description that he uttered during that meeting. This is having huge consequences right across the globe, I think, for the United States. You heard those strong words from the United Nations there. I think we are in some ways used to hearing some pretty shocking things from the President of the United States, but this perhaps pushes the boundaries even further than they've gone before.
And yet, Gary, we still hear many who defend Donald Trump and his plain speaking on this issue.
Yeah, some do, and certainly some among his base here in the United States will applaud this. It's interesting that there's been a pretty deafening silence from the senior leadership of the Republican Party in this country about what was said, what are we, almost 20 hours ago. Even amongst some of the Republicans who have said what they think, the language has been pretty mild. Tim Scott, the only African-American senator, a Republican, he said it was disappointing, to say the least. Disappointing, he thought the comments were. And one Republican congressman from Utah who has a Haitian background, he said it was divisive and elitist. The Democrats, on the other hand, not holding back, as you can imagine, calling Donald Trump a racist, plain and simple.
Gary, just a minute or so on another story with ramifications for international diplomacy. Donald Trump saying he will not be coming to the United Kingdom to open the new London embassy.
Yeah, another point of friction between the US and the UK. There have been a few of these recently. You'll remember Donald Trump retweeted some material from a far-right group in Britain which upset the Prime Minister considerably, and Donald Trump lashed out at her when she condemned that. You'll remember other incidents as well in terms of the relations across the pond that haven't gone too well in recent times. I think there's a suggestion that perhaps Donald Trump was concerned about potential demonstrations that he might face in the UK. There's a lot of confusion about his reasoning here, simply because he lays the blame on President Obama for this new US embassy that he said has cost an awful lot of money, whereas actually that was an embassy that was decided to be built by the predecessor, George W. Bush. So a lot of confusion, but the upshot is that this expected visit next month to London is not now going ahead.
Gary O'Donoghue. Well, in an ironic twist, on the day he was accused of racism by the UN, Donald Trump has been honouring the late Martin Luther King at the White House just in the last hour or so. Before signing a proclamation, this is what he had to say.
Today we celebrate Dr. King for standing up for the self-evident truth Americans hold so dear, that no matter what the color of our skin or the place of our birth, we are all created equal by God. This April, we will mark a half-century since Reverend King was so cruelly taken from us by an assassin's bullet. But while Dr. King is no longer with us, his words and his vision only grow stronger through time. Today we mourn his loss, we celebrate his legacy, and we pledge to fight for his dream of equality, freedom, justice, and peace.
Mr. President, are you a racist? Mr. President, will you respond to these serious questions about your statement, sir? No, Mr. President. We're talking to the President, not you, sir. Mr. President.
Well, as you saw, Donald Trump ignoring repeated questions there, asking him whether he was a racist, leaving the room after signing that proclamation honouring Martin Luther King. Aides there, you heard, replied no to the questions. And Mr. Trump himself shook hands with a few people before heading out of the door. Look.